Atahualpa and Pizarro. Atahualpa was the 14th emperor of Tawantinsuyu, or Inca Empire, which spanned parts of present-day Peru, Chile, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Colombia. At the time of Atahualpa's reign, it was home to approximately 12 million people. He became Sapa Inca, or emperor, when he defeated his brother Huascar in a civil war in 1532. Pizarro was a Spanish conquistador and distant cousin of Hernan Cortes. His first two expeditions to conquer the Inca Empire failed due to lack of resources and hostilities of the Inca. During his third expedition, he captured and executed Atahualpa. He then traveled to Cusco, the capital of the Inca Empire, signaling the conquest of Tawantinsuyu. Later, he founded Lima, which became the capital of Peru under Spanish rule. Atahualpa was traveling with his army to Cusco to claim his position as emperor after his victory over Huascar. The Inca and Spanish forces both neared a town called Cajamarca. Pizarro invited Atahualpa to come to the plaza. Atahualpa entered the town with several thousand unarmed men. When the Inca arrived, they saw no Spaniards since Pizarro had ordered his men to hide in order to launch a surprise attack. The only Spaniard to come forward was Friar Vicente de Valverde, who carried a Bible. Okay, the first piece of information we get to take a closer look, and look at the question: did Atahualpa hold the Bible to his ear? Is a textbook account from tells us it's a 2006 history textbook titled "World History: Medieval to Early Modern Times." Um, It is an American textbook from about 14 years ago. And it very clearly tells us that Atahualpa held the book to his ear and listened to it. And so we're using this as a jumping off point and saying, well, according to this 2006 textbook, clearly he held the book to his ear. According to this, he held the book to his ear and he listened to it. And then we're going to use two other documents to verify that. So it also gives us some background information on Atahualpa a little bit. He was the last Inca king, brave, popular with the Inca army, but he didn't rule for long. So a little background there. We know just from what we saw previously. We got some additional information, and according to the textbook, he threw it to the ground. And then what I noticed is this is part of a biographies section in a textbook, and which is generally at the end of text, like the glossary, or it's in an appendix, and it's a place for kids to just flip back and verify or corroborate a name that they come across. And it may lead us to believe that the textbook goes into greater detail at some other place in an earlier chapter in the book. And so I'm wondering if that changes the reliability or not, because it's just a summary in a biography section of a larger textbook. But we do want to ask the question: is the account reliable? Why or why not? Most people think that, well, it's an American textbook from 2006. It must be accurate. Or perhaps you could consider that, well, it's 600 years or 500 something years after. Maybe it's not reliable. Okay. And then the third question we're looking at is if the account is accurate or not. And we've used a number of metrics to sort of measure accuracy. I think the most common one we have seen so far is what you guys have noted is that an eyewitness um, is has a certain level of accuracy than a person that doesn't actually witness an event. But most historical events are not recorded by eyewitnesses. And oftentimes there's research that is done, and then we have to question, how good is the research? And then I think, as we saw with some stuff in the Incan Empire, we saw some politically motivated um, ideas that were recorded, and that's something that we want to challenge with when we ask ourselves about accuracy. Sometimes evidence is documented that is meant to accomplish something that may serve the purposes of the author. So we want to know the purposes of the author. In this case, the authors we will presume most textbooks are written by college professors, probably. And that's not to say that they don't have their own political bias. So it's possible that they do. So these are some larger questions that we're asking to take it, and then we'll jump off. And so let's take a look at document A and get an idea how it compares to the text. Document A, Francisco de Xeres' account, modified. So the source, this is from the Reports on the Discovery of Peru, written by Francisco de Xeres in 1534. 1534, and that is a year after. It says that he participated in the conquest of Peru. And he wrote reports on the discovery of Peru. Probably safe to say that this is an eyewitness account. Also interesting that he worked directly with or for Francisco Pizarro, and maybe that influences his writings. But I think it is safe to say that this is an eyewitness account. And then he opens up and tells us that Father Vicente advanced. And can you just picture this? A cross in one hand and the Bible in the other. The dude's probably, what, scared out of his mind? Or a little bit nervous. And he approaches Atahualpa, and he's speaking through an interpreter. And I am a priest of God, and I teach Christians the things of God. And I wonder why he added this. What would you think? Why do you think he added this part here that I have highlighted in blue? And then it goes on to explain specifically what plays out in from the perspective of de Xeres. And nowhere does it say that Atahualpa held the book to his ear and tried to listen to it. So we've got an eyewitness account that I think challenges the textbook from 2006. It does say that Atahualpa got angry. He tried to open it. He didn't know how to open it. They tried to show him. He got frustrated. He threw it. But it doesn't say that he held it to his ear as if he was trying to listen. And then down here, it says, I know, this line here, I know well how you have behaved on the road, how you have treated my chiefs and taken the cloth from us. This is the only quote that we get from Atahualpa. And it leads us to believe that he went into this with a little bit, he was upset with what he had heard and what he was told about the Spanish conquistadors as they made their way from the coast and into Cajamarca, where they were at this point. And then finally down here on below, I highlighted this in blue. This gives us some indication, what we call the guns, germs, and steel theory, which was a book written about 10 or 15, about 15 years ago. It was the idea that when the Europeans showed up to the Western Hemisphere, the other half of the globe, they had guns, and that was a game changer. Even just the sound of a gun exploding freaked people out. It wasn't that the guns were not so accurate, but they were loud and they were intimidating. The idea of germs, in the end, it's smallpox that kills most Native Americans over the next 300 to 400 years, not necessarily guns. So it's guns, stern, germs, and then we see and steel. The Europeans and the Spanish, they had steel weapons, which made which were really a problem for Native Americans who were using, say, bronze or stone or wood. And so this, I think, is a big factor. Also, the horse, just the horse itself. The horse is going to change the entire western half of the globe. Um, and because the horse was agile, it could pull, it could carry, and you could ride it. And the horse, as has been once famously said, conquered the greatest enemy of Native Americans, which was distance. So the horse is a game changer too. The Atahualpa and his folks are not there. They do not have any of this going on. They don't. This is all new to them. Guns. They have no idea that they're catching smallpox. The steel, the horse, all of it freaked them out. And so that's. But for our purposes, nowhere does it say that he held it to his ear. Document B tells us, I think, tells us the same thing. So this is from The Relation, a book written in 1571, maybe three-ish decades after. We learn that Pedro Pizarro, a Spanish conquistador, and his cousin of Francisco, his carne of Francisco, and it says that he took part in most events of the Spanish conquest of Peru and wrote an extensive chronicle. This is about 30 years after. And so it's fair to ask, was Pedro Pizarro an eyewitness? Yes, no, maybe, probably. And I think the answer is probably. So most people would consider this an eyewitness account, most likely. Because, and for one thing, it basically corroborates all of document A, which, as we said, undermines the account from the textbook. Because same thing, nowhere in here does it say that Atahualpa held the Bible to his ear and tried to listen to it. He asked for it. The priest closed it, handed it to him. He got frustrated, threw it in his hand. Now, it's possible that somewhere between here and between these two sentences that he did, but it doesn't say that he did. And so that, again, you have what is most likely an eyewitness who does not record that he held it to his ear. And then, okay, so that's A, that's B. In both cases, they are, both documents are written by eyewitnesses, not true of the textbook. They pretty much give virtually the same account, even though they're written 3 decades apart. And what we don't know is the story. We don't hear anything about Atahualpa holding the Bible to his ear. Not sure where that story comes from, but it is pretty popular, so much so that it makes it into modern textbooks. But the fact that neither Spanish document corroborates the account suggests that it probably didn't happen. Okay, and then, and so that's A and B, and so the questions for you are graphic organizer, and then here, and then the main idea is the last 2 questions here, especially what we're looking for. What would having a document from this perspective? So what if we did have something from Atahualpa? Because that's what's missing, is a document, is evidence. Though, what did Atahualpa? What did the Incans say? And that's what we don't have. And how might that change the perspective of what we're talking about?